This is a structure that you can put into your sales calls today that will dramatically increase the chance of you closing. So I take calls for fitness coaches. I close deals exactly like yours every single day, every single week. And I've even been called the PIF king in my time. And that doesn't happen by accident. I just don't get onto a sales call randomly and start closing paid in fulls. I've got a framework and I've got a strategy in play that I use on repeat every single day. I can literally wake up 10 minutes later, take a sales call and close a paid in full. I'm that confident in myself. I don't need massive preparation time, and I've just got this strategy drilled into my mind as sort of like muscle memory. So now you're probably thinking, right, I don't really care about you waking up. I want to know this strategy so I can use it and plug it into my business myself, and I'm going to give it to you. So whenever you get onto a sales call, there are a couple of points that you need to hit before you even go in for the close. And that is point A, discovery. You want to get the pain from their point A. Then you want to do point B, discovery, which is ultimately where they want to be. It's their dream state. Then we want to find out what their reason for urgency is. So like, why do they feel like they need to change now? Then we want to find out what the consequence of them is of them not changing. And then we want to move on to the pitch. Then we want to move on to the close, and then potentially handling any objections that may or may not come up. So first off, we need to start off with the agenda, okay? So because I take calls for fitness coaches, obviously that's something that I say. So what I do, literally they join the call, I'm like, hey, how are you? And I know a lot of people sort of shit on saying like, hey, how are you? I just say it because I'm a nice person and because I genuinely ask. I'm not like, hey, how are you? What are you calling from? What's the weather like? I'm like, hey, how's it going? How are you? And then what I like to do is I always like to say to them, oh, like, is it a day off work for you? Like, are you in work? Are you on your break? Because what that does is it gives me their job, because I don't know this going into the call, so I have no expectation of that person. And then it allows me to gauge the rest of the call, and it allows me to gauge what type of person they are before they've even told me. So it's obviously a good indicator of finances as well, because I've had people get on a call with me that have been welders with no money, and I've also had people get on a call with me who have been executives of companies and obviously had money, okay? So that's the first thing I like to do, is I like to just build a little bit of rapport. Like I'm talking 30 seconds max. Ask them their job, and then I like draw a line in the sand and I do a quick introduction. And I always say, just a bit of a quick introduction from me. My name's Matthew. Obviously I take the calls for whoever I'm closing for. Obviously this call really isn't about me, it's about you, and basically the whole purpose of today is for us to find out a bit more about you, what you feel like you're struggling with, how you feel like we can help, and ultimately what your goal is that we can help you with. Then when I feel like I know that I can help you, I'll let you know what that looks like towards the end of the call. I'll go over how it all works, what the investment will be like, and how we would get started on it today. Does that sound good to you? That is me setting the agenda, setting the expectations, and getting the first yes. And because I've mentioned about the investment at the end of the call, they can relax right now and they don't need to think, oh, what's the price, what's the price, what's the price? Because they know that we're going over it at the end of the call. And what it also does as well is it eliminates the whole thing of them going, oh, I just want to know the price because I need to know if I can help you first. And then when they say yes to me setting the agenda, I literally go straight into it and I'm like, okay, so just for sort of my understanding, like what made you feel like booking in the call with us initially? And then they're going to say something like, oh, I've followed someone on Insta for a while, I've done this, I've done that, I've done this, I've done that, and they'll give me like quite a drawn out explanation. And that is when I'm entering the point A, discovery phase. Oh, I'm just at a point now where I want to lose weight and I'm struggling, and they'll normally go on and on and on, and I'll be taking notes and I'll be writing down every single piece of key information that they say. And then they typically say, most people either give a really short answer, like 10 seconds, or they give a really long answer. If they give a short answer, I just acknowledge that. I'm like, okay, obviously, thank you for sharing that with me. So like, tell me, like, how do you feel like we can help? Like, where are you right now? Like, what's your current situation? And then what I like to do is I like to ask them how they feel like we can help to get the dream outcome. So I can write that down. And then I also ask them, how do you feel like we can help? Because they're going to say a problem that they feel like we can help with. That's for the short answer. With the long answer, what I like to do is I like to write down things on my notes section, and I like to reference that. So what I'll do is I'll say, let's say for instance, they talk for 2 minutes. I will say to them, okay, obviously, you said a lot there, and I just want to unpack this sort of one by one. You mentioned something really interesting about a minute ago, and you said, blah, 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 repeat it back to them so that we obviously can communicate that we understand them to the person. Do you mind just like sharing with me a bit more about that? Like, and I'd ask a more specific question, but as a framework, this is what I say. Then what they'll do is they'll go into that, they'll go into a bit more about it. And I'm like, okay, like how long do you feel like this has been impacting you for? Blah, 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 finding out timeline, point A, more discovery. Then what I like to do is I like to go into their dream state. So I'm like, okay, so like obviously right now the problem is blah, 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 X, Y, Z. And this obviously allows me to repeat myself to them and repeat what they've said to me so that they can understand that I'm obviously listening to them. And then I'm like, okay, so obviously right now we've got this problem of X, Y, Z, blah, blah, blah. And what I'll do as well is I will create a gap on the call and I will say, okay, well, those are the surface level problems, but what's really going on here is X, Y, and Z. So I had a call with someone this morning that I closed, and he said that he couldn't stay on track with his diet. He struggled fitting in everything with work. He struggled to stick to something long term. And he basically had an all or nothing mindset. So what I did was I injected some more pain into him, and I said to him, okay, well, obviously the not sticking to something in work, the not being able to stick to a diet, and essentially trying to go too hard too quick and messing it all up, it's not the problem, it's a symptom. It's a symptom of the all or nothing mindset. And realistically, if we do not fix the all or nothing mindset, you could go to us, you could go to anyone else, and you are not going to fix that because you need to address that first. So I'm building a gap. So I'm basically displaying to him like, look, it's not just the diet you struggle with, it's something else that is impacting the diet. So I'm stretching out his problems and expanding his horizon of problems, which is known as building the gap. So then once I've done that and I've built the gap, I go into point B, and then I find out, okay, so like, what is it that you feel like you want to do? Like, let's just paint a picture of, I don't know, 6 to 12 months from now. Like, where do you feel like you want to be? Not only in your body, but also like psychologically as well. And they're going to tell me, obviously, a couple of things. And then what I like to do is I like to typically ask follow-up questions, but like, okay, like, how would that make you feel? Like, if you were able to do X, Y, Z, like, how would that make you feel? Like, what sort of impact would that have on your life, your family, your confidence? And then I get them to elaborate and elaborate and elaborate. And then what I like to do is I like to insert urgency. So I'll say to them, okay, like obviously, like I really love the goals. I love the fact that you want to do X, Y, and Z, and I actually have a lot of respect for that. It's also important to dig deep as well, because someone doesn't just want to lose weight. I had a call with someone the other day and they said they wanted to lose weight, but behind it was the fact that they wanted to be able to grow up and watch their kids and play with their kids. Now that's obviously like, that's deep, there's depth. This is very important for us to find out. So what I like to do is I like to repeat the goals back to them, and I like to repeat the strongest, most hard-hitting goal, and I like to isolate that before I create any urgency. So what I'll say is, okay, obviously, like there's a lot of goals here. Now, if you don't mind me, like which one would you say you feel is more important for you? Would it be losing 10 kilograms, or do you feel like it would be more along the lines of being a role model for your son? And they would say that, and I'm like, okay, Jack, why do you feel like that's the most important one out of all of them? And then they give you even more emotional leverage. And then what you can do then is move on into urgency. So what you can say is, okay, obviously I really love that goal. Now, obviously there's problems that you're facing right now, are ones that you've been struggling with for months, potentially years. What would you say has happened now that's made you feel like, right, I actually need some help with this and I need to make the change to do blah, blah, blah. And then they're going to give you their reason for urgency. Okay, then what you can do is on the flip side of that, ask a consequence question. So you can say something to the extent of, okay, like I don't want to be like negative Nancy in this scenario, but like let's say for instance, if we weren't able to achieve that, or you didn't take the action required to get towards that goal, what sort of implications do you feel like that would have on your life, or your feelings, or your finances, or your emotions? That's going to be their reason for taking action as well as the urgency. Then we go into the pitch. Now I use a slide deck for the people that I close for. I don't like slide decks, but I take about 4 minutes to run through a 6-page slide deck, roughly. If I was closing for myself, I wouldn't use that. I would just verbalize how you're going to help them and tie in everything. But basically, when I get to the edge of the slide deck, what I do is I go over the onboarding procedure with them. And I'm like, right, we always take the investment on the call to get people started ASAP. So that sets the expectation that they need to obviously invest today. And what it does as well is it lays out the expectation of what's happening next, so we're taking control, and it's also setting up a question which I'm about to get to. So I run them through the onboarding process. I'm like, right, this happens, that happens, this happens, that happens. Then what I do is I ask them, do you have any questions about what I've just said? Because ultimately I want things to be crystal clear. And then they say no, or they'll ask me a question and I'll answer it. And then I say to them, okay, I've got a question, for you, and it's probably the most important one that I asked today, but do you feel like this would actually help you? Just so we can get rid of all objections, right? Because if they're like, yeah, 100%, I know this would help me, we can use that if any objections come up, okay? Then where we go from there is they'll say, okay, yeah, 100% this will help me. And then what I ask them is, okay, like, just for interest, like why, like what part of this do you feel like would be the most helpful for you? And like, why is that helpful for you? And they're gonna sell themselves on why this is gonna help them or why it's gonna get them closer to their goal. Then what I do is I move in to the timeline. So I'm like, okay, now money aside for a second, do you feel like this is something that you want to get started on right away? Because then we know if they give us an objection, it is finance related. It's not because they don't believe the program will help them, because they've told us and they've told themselves, and it's not because of timing, because they've literally said that I will start ASAP. Okay, so then we move on to actually giving them the figures, right? Obviously given the figures, they're the close, they're the don't close. But if we have objections, we have got so much to backtrack on and so many data points to pull on and so many emotional levers to pull on, we can obviously use these points to overcome objections. So like, let's say for instance, someone says they need to think about it. You can say, okay, just out of interest, a minute ago you mentioned to me the program's perfect for you, and you told me that it's because blah, blah, blah. Is that still the case? Yes. Okay, so I'm guessing that obviously, you know, the program's perfect, you feel like it works for you, it's something you want to get started on ASAP. Is it fair to say that the finances is what you feel like you need to go away and think about? And then you can isolate that objection and then handle it like a financial objection. You'd be like, okay, so like when you say the finances, like, is it a case of you feel nervous looking at that number, like you can't afford it, you can't pay it all up front? Like what's the true concern here? And then they're going to give you the true objection, and then you handle it like always. But the key thing is that we use and collect as much data as we can. Now, you cannot outpitch a shit discovery phase. So if you haven't done the discovery and got the emotional leverage at the start of a sales call, you are not going to outpitch yourself. You are not going to get to the end of the sales call and just make this Hail Mary pitch that's going to help you close. You need to get the discovery right, and you need to pull out all the reasons for urgency, the consequences, why they need it now, why they need to start now, what happens if they don't start without it, what their goal is, what their struggle is. And we need to basically ascertain all of those things in order to close for paid in full and handle any potential objections that might come up. So this is exactly how I run a sales call that gets me paid in fulls every single week. If you want to literally watch and copy me word for word how I do sales calls, how I book sales calls, there is a free training down below that you can claim right now. You just need to click the link, put your email in, and the training is all yours to watch, annotate, and absorb completely for free. I'll catch you in the next one.